purpose of this video is to explain how we administer the smell identification test. This test is known in the literature as the University of Pennsylvania smell identification test, but commercially it's known as the smell identification test. Basically comprised of 4 booklets, each of which contains 10 scratch and sniff labels on separate pages. It's a very straightforward test. Patients can administer this test, self-administer this test, or it can be administered by a test administrator, as we'll talk about today, or as we'll do today. So basically, each of the 40 test items has a multiple choice question. The first one is, does this odor smell almost like gasoline, pizza, peanuts, and lilac? What we do is we scrape open the odor and then have the subject or patient smell it. And when they give a response, we fill in the response into this column to the right of the descriptions. Now, it's very important that the patient gives an answer even if they smell nothing, or if they're not sure that it smells like any of these items. That's called forced choice testing, and it's very, very critical because it allows us to detect malingering, forces people to be very careful in trying to do the best they can in identifying an odor. And other reasons, we've found that this is a much more reliable approach to this kind of testing. So it's very simple. Mistakes are made sometimes. People will scrape open the scratch and sniff label too much. It will smell more like pencil than it will like the odor that's supposed to smell like. So my usual strategy is to make a Z with a couple lines through it, and then I give it immediately to the patient, to the subject, and I say, this smells most like gasoline, pizza, peanuts, or lilac.
Pizza.
Pizza, okay? Then in that case, that's the third answer down. We fill in very nicely, completely that answer. We go to the next item. So again, we mark with a Z, a couple of lines through there. Big sniff. Does that smell like dill pickle, bubblegum, wintergreen, or watermelon?
Bubblegum.
Bubblegum, okay? So we fill in the answer B. So this is very straightforward. We go through and do this through all 4 booklets. Does it smell most like tomato, licorice, strawberry, and menthol?
Menthol.
Menthol, okay. Smell most like whiskey, honey, lime, or cherry?
Cherry.
Does it smell most like grass, pizza, motor oil, or pineapple?
Right.
Now, it's very important in this type of testing to be sure the person inhales and sniffs well. In some disorders like Parkinson's disease, they don't sniff as much, and so it's important to instruct and be certain that you hear the subject of the patient sniffing adequately as they're going through the test. This soda smells most like skunk, mint, fruit punch, or cola.
Right.
Mint?
Mint.
Now, we're using the North American version of this test, which has items, response items like skunk, which aren't known throughout the world. So there are 14, if I remember correctly, 14 different language versions of this test. And some of the items have been changed slightly, both in terms of the odors and the responses, but it's essentially the same. It smells like banana, garlic, cherry, or motor oil.
Banana.
Does it smell most like licorice, clove, chili, or banana?
Clove.
Notice we hold this right up to the nose so you can get a good sniff of the label. Clove, lilac, leather, or apple?
Leather.
Does it smell like skunk, coconut, cedar, or honey?
Coconut.
Okay. So we've completed the first of the 4 booklets. Really, we can go through all 4 booklets, but you get the general idea. It's pretty straightforward. It's important, though, that you complete the booklets in the order that they're indicated. So you have booklet number 1, booklet number 2, 3, and 4. You always want to complete the booklets in that order. Having said that, for some protocols, if you want to randomize the booklets or if you want to test one side of the nose separately from the other, but only want to use 40 odors, then you can randomize the booklets to the 2 nostrils, depending on the nature of the protocol. One of the other things that I think is very important when you give this test is you make sure the subject or the patient fills out the information in its entirety on the back of page 1. Here we have information about age, whether they smoke or not, their ethnic background, and so on. These are all important when we go to interpret the test results. If we don't know the age of the subject, or if we don't know their sex, then we really can't use the norms. So that's very handy, but sometimes, particularly in research studies, people will collect a lot of data, fail to put the names on the back of each page, they trip in the hallway, and all of a sudden they don't know whose data is who. So paying attention to detail on a test like this is very, very critical. Now we've completed 2 of the booklets. I've shown you how a test administrator administers them, but I'm going to turn over the latter 2 booklets in this case to show you how easy it is that it can be self-administered. So the subject is going to go through this himself and basically fill out the answers. Now, one of the important aspects of this kind of testing is that you have to get an answer for every single item. And sometimes when people self-administer this test, they basically skip over an odor, don't notice it, forget to fill it in, and that sort of invalidates the whole test. So you need to really have an answer for every item. Okay? You can do the final 2, and then we'll score the test and go from there. Now, some subjects will complain that they think it's strange that they can't smell the odor if it's a different type of odor, that they are forced to make a choice. And the important thing is to emphasize to them that it's really critical that an answer be made on every single item, or there's no purpose of doing the test. So I think that's one of the downsides of this is some people will not want to say they smell something when they don't smell anything. However, the vast majority of people that's not a problem with, and the others can be convinced, but you just have to be sure that they're aware that that's how the test operates. So once all the items have been filled out, you check to be sure that none were missed. And then I'll show you how we score the test with the answer key and the norms. So this is the test manual, which explains everything that I've just explained in this video pretty much. In the manual, we do have the scoring keys, the back page of the manual, and so you go basically to the first booklet, you open it up, and then you go through, put the items, numbers on the key that correspond to the item numbers on the test, you score it. You can see in this case, you look in what's been filled in here, and this individual missed just one, actually, the very first one. So there's miss 1 on that. I usually write on that test the numbers that are wrong, on that booklet rather. So the second booklet, then the scoring key gets applied, and on this booklet there was 2 missed. So we marked them over like that, right, -2. On the front, -2. The third booklet, we did the same thing. In this case, all of the items were correctly answered, so we'll say 0 missed, 0 missed. And then finally, on the fourth booklet, we'll see if any of the items were missed, and it looks like that in that case, they were all done correctly. So again, it's a 0. So what we do is we have a total score out of 40. In this case, this individual had a 37. And we can look up that on the normative data sheet that are located in the administration manual. And you'll see that there are norms from page 8 to 9. So we can look up a person, in his case he was 32 years of age, scored 37, so he's actually at the 53rd percentile. Now he's right on average for a person his age. The norms are interesting because we can not only determine a person's percentile relative to their age and gender, but we also can determine in an absolute sense whether they have a smell problem. So we talk about, if you remember I mentioned that if they score low on this test, in this case below 5, the odds are they're avoiding the correct answer. We call that probable malingering. Remember, there are 4 choices. You should be able to get 1 out of 4 correct if you have no sense of smell. Therefore, you should get 10 out of 40 on average, but there's a sampling distribution around that. So in general, if you score anywhere from 6 to 18 on this test, you're in the anosmia range. In other words, you have no sense of smell. And it's a borderline gray as you get closer to the edges of that, but in general, that's useful clinically in terms of defining anosmia, or no smell function. You can see in this region, you have severe, moderate, or mild loss, and then you have what we consider to be normosmia. So it's very helpful with patients to let them know that, yes, in an absolute sense, they may have, let's say, severe microsmia, but as you get over to the normative data with these percentile ranks, they may score above average. So if you get a higher score than 50, they're doing better than the average person in their age range. So that's very useful to have, both the absolute indication and the relative indication relative to one's sex and age. Notice we have male norms and we have female norms. Women have a slightly better sense of smell than men do, so we correct the norms slightly for the 2 sexes. Also notice that there's a drop-off in terms of what we consider to be normal in an absolute sense for young children. So 5 to 9-year-olds, we consider norm to be normal, anything over 19 to be pretty normal, as you can see here, whereas in an adult, that would be considered to be a severe loss. Certainly for very young children, they're not familiar with all the items. As a consequence, we've adjusted the norms accordingly. So that's pretty much the way that test is done. The key things are to get an answer for every single item, that the individual doesn't scrape away all the odors on the scratch and sniff label, and then you can essentially look at the norms in a very straightforward fashion and interpret the test. I want to thank you for your attention, and that pretty much tells you how to do the smell identification test.